Hello and welcome to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. I'm Karen McCarthy. In this edition, the business of education and the lure of the land, the ongoing push to attract the best and brightest to the rural sector. With warnings we're losing a whole generation of people on the land, what's at stake if we don't arrest that slide? And avoiding the quarter-life crisis, why we must stop encouraging students to do what they enjoy at school and uni and instead get stuck into the hard stuff. My guest this week, Waikato University's Professor of Agribusiness, Jacqueline Rowarth, a woman who's passionate about agriculture, science and education. And with her today, one of her students, Thomas MacDonald, who's in the second year of an agribusiness and finance degree at Waikato. Thomas, you're a gem and quite a rare gem from what I understand, an agriculture student. Lovely to have you here. Just tell us first, what is it you're studying, where you're at?
Yeah, my degree is a BBA, a Bachelor of Business Analysis, and within that I'm majoring in agribusiness and finance. So I'm getting the farming and the practical side of that, and as well understanding the commercial side, the finance and investment valuation.
You off a farm? You grew up on a farm?
I'm a farming child, yeah, grew up on a farm in Gordonton.
Yeah. In the Waikato. So tell me a bit about that dairy farm.
Yeah, dairy farm, 300 cows in Gordonton. We run a herd home at the moment, yeah, and looking at ways to continue farming sustainably.
What attracted you or appealed to you about making this your, I don't know if it'll be your life's work, but certainly the path you wanted to go down?
Looking at agriculture and looking at the future of New Zealand and being a food producer. I mean, if you look at the world population graph, it's exponential. I mean, look at what New Zealand does. We produce food, we can do that well. Looking to the future, we're going to have to produce more food. How can we do that? Through agribusiness, through technology, intensification. I mean, all things that need to be looked at and things we need to be studying.
Jacqueline, you tell us about this rare creature and why you've brought him in with you today.
Because he's one of the type that we want, motivated, keen, able. He's applied and he's applying himself to his academic studies as well. He's already realised that the future requires sustainable food production and sees that's where the opportunities are for the future. And though it's a new degree at University of Waikato, many people have been saying, why haven't you got in there before? And the answer is, in the academic system in New Zealand, that degrees are regulated by the Committee for University Academic Programmes, and you need the point of difference. And it has been identified that there are many students who follow whatever their passion is at school and actually might not do the sciences, which then makes it quite difficult for them to do an agricultural science degree. But that agribusiness, not based on science, but based on economics, finance, accounting, all of those sorts of HR issues, is huge and increasing in terms of value around the world. What we see when we look at the world's predictions is, well, already there are shortages in Australia, America and Europe in terms of people with agribusiness understanding. So I think Waikato's right to be moving into it, and I think that Thomas and his cohort are terrific. They've recognised the opportunities and they're moving in their boots and all.
Do you see it as an agricultural degree or a business finance degree, or is the beauty of it is it's got a foot in each camp?
Yeah, I think that's right on. The beauty of it is it covers both aspects in full. I mean, I'm not doing a half and half job. I mean, I'm covering agriculture in its fullest and covering the business side in its fullest with a double major. And being at Waikato Management School, I think both are done really well.
It's a new degree this year, is it?
Last year it started.
Sorry, you're in the second year,
yes,
aren't you?
But
right.
In the first year you do just the basic economics, finance.
Yeah, I mean, your first year is just a general business degree with your electives into the agribusiness as well. So first year I've got, just like any other commerce student in New Zealand, I've done my basic economics, accounting, finance, marketing, and then once I've gone to the second year, really specialised into the agribusiness and the finance.
How many of the other students with you are like you, came off a farm? They have that farming background. Are they all like that?
I'd say probably a 50-50 mix in our agribusiness classes. You get those who are off farming and always knew they wanted to be involved in farming. And then you get those who have acknowledged that this is the future of New Zealand's biggest industry and are really wanting to do their homework and study it.
Does this give these students an edge? As with Thomas, he grew up on a farm, he's born and bred. That is a definite advantage.
Absolutely, having any agricultural understanding is an advantage. We have, for the whole of New Zealand, 5,500 Bachelor of Business Study type degree people, and those with the agricultural components are really looked for. And the great thing about the agribusiness major is that other students can come and do some of the classes, and there is an increasing number saying, oh, this is where the future is, can I do these papers as well? So I think that the increase in double major is going to be greater in the future. Terrific.
So by that same token, you don't have to have had a farming background to do agribusiness.
Absolutely
That's the thing,
not.
it's open to all comers.
Yep. We've got people who are really interested in policy, suddenly realising that actually regional policy is just huge for New Zealand because it is the economy. And people who come in and make wonderful esoteric statements about how the environment should look and put all the farmers out of business are probably not going to last very long on a council. So they are increasingly involved. And another great thing about the university is that various lecturers are saying, could I come and do a guest lecture for their class in something somewhat different than agriculture? And then the students are saying, can I follow this up? Where is the more information? This is exactly what I need to know for my future. And that's just so good. So,
and employment-wise, I know there was, I think you drew my attention to the fact there was a Telegraph survey or the standings of which degrees were more likely to land you in a great job. Agricultural science, is that right, was number 5 on the list?
Agriculture and anything related to agriculture was number 5. The top one was medicine and veterinary, you know, the specific degrees, and agriculture for the first time for quite a long time is actually in the top 5. And that's a very good indication of the sorts of rewards that people are getting.
And is that mirrored in this country? That was a British survey.
There's high employment and the salaries have gone up, Karen. So we are seeing that the starting packages for the applied science graduates, those are the ones I know about, are going out now, remembering that we haven't got graduates from this program yet. They're being offered salary packages amounting to $70,000. So the car is in there, and it might be that they get the car after 6 months, but nevertheless, that is considerably better than the average BA at $34,000. So it's market forces at work. And of course, Australia's crying out for them, but I don't want them to go there yet.
This is the thing, isn't it? If there is a demand overseas for our agricultural graduates, how do we keep them here? How do we keep people like Thomas in the country?
We have to ensure that they have good returns and rewards for the effort that they've gone through in getting their degrees, and then the effort they put into getting a good rural group around them, the work that they're going to do. And that means valuing sustainably produced food appropriately.
Do you see your future overseas, or would you like to stay in the short term anyway, I guess, after you graduate in New Zealand?
Yeah, ultimately New Zealand's where I'd like to be. Yeah, I mean, growing up in New Zealand and seeing the industry grow to the point it's at now, I mean, that's what I'm excited about, seeing where it's going to go in the future. The problem is we're going to need food in the future. Looking at, there's a whole lot of people already working on that, and there's a whole lot of people coming to join that. I'm just excited to see what's going to happen, New Zealand food production for the future.
And you want to be a part of that?
Yeah, I'd definitely like to be a part of that.
How long are you at uni? Is it a 3 or 4 year degree?
It's a 3-year degree, so I've got 1 more year to go.
Right. And would you stay in the Waikato? I mean, I know, I think it's been described as the Silicon Valley of agribusiness.
Yeah.
Would you stay put? Is there enough going on there?
I think there is, actually. I mean, you look around the Waikato, all your agribusiness giants have got headquarters offices there. I mean, ultimately it all depends on who's going to employ me at the end of the day. But I mean, I think there is a high chance of staying in the Waikato.
And as a student, I suppose it's quite good. Are you living at home still?
I am, on the farm. Cheapest option.
Those things have to be taken into consideration, I suppose, the cost of studying these days.
Well, we were just having a discussion about that on the way up, and actually when I factor in inflation onto my fees and the books that I had to buy, because we now give them all that material, actually the cost isn't that different. And our top 10% of students are going through on scholarships. So remembering that when I went through varsity it was only 5% of the population, and now we have 30% graduating, actually for some top students it's even cheaper than it ever was.
Coming up, why parents need to stop encouraging their kids to do just what makes them happy, why doing the hard graft counts. Stay with us on Straight Talk. Hello, I'm Karen McCarthy and you're back with Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. And my guest this week, agribusiness professor Jacqueline Rowarth and university student Thomas MacDonald. Let's talk about that transition from school to tertiary studies, such a huge step and more options, as you just mentioned, than ever these days. Yes. I've got a figure here, more than 4 times as many careers on offer as in the 70s and more than 10 times the qualifications. Can we sustain all those students?
Well, the students coming through, and remember that there's a vastly greater number going through tertiary education of some description than there used to be. It's like 60% coming into tertiary education now, when back in the day, when those of us who are in our prime of life but less flexible than we were went through, it was 5% of school leavers. So can we sustain it? Well, we've moved in the early 90s into a situation of funding effectively what the students want to do. That's the bums on seats model. And there is an interesting challenge going on in terms of sustaining some of the degrees that seem to be less popular than others. And agricultural science was one of them. During the early part of this decade, the 2000s, since the turn of the century, we actually got down to only 40 students in agricultural science for the whole of the country.
That's woeful.
And that, because we have 20,000 graduates a year, is quite extraordinary. And one of our challenges, because agricultural science as a degree is based on chemistry, biology at school, is that the liberation of the curriculum at schools there are so many different types of subjects that they can take, that schools are advising children to keep their options open by doing a range of the traditional maths, English, general science. Then the fourth one is often some sort of recreational studies or sports science. And then, well, if you're interested in sport, you could do media studies. And then the sixth one becomes photography or music for fun. And for a university serious curriculum, actually there's only 3 there that one can teach from, and they are limiting their options by taking some of these more apparently fun subjects.
Because what happens? They get spat out at the end and there's basically no job there for people.
I'm afraid so. And the employment figures from some of these newer degrees, it's quite low. What the careers guidance people are faced with is that it's trying to guide a child appropriately when their parents are saying, we just want you to be happy. Well, of course we want our children to be happy. But happiness at 14, if they're trying to make a decision about subjects, is not the same thing that will give you rewards and the feeling of doing some good and therefore happiness later in a career. And in the States, having seen what is happening to some of these liberal arts degrees, the creative degrees, the suicide rate is up there. They're saying the quarter-life crisis, which is the education conveyor belt has dumped me at 22, where I wasn't expecting. Everybody said I could have a career on the stage. There's no silver screen contract, so there's depression and awful statistics. Now in the States, they're saying, ask what the world needs and follow that path. What attributes do you have in what the world needs? And if you have practical ability and you have some commercial nous, the world needs agribusiness.
You've been savvy enough to figure this out. When you decided to take agribusiness as a subject, was there any feedback? I mean, you're a musician, I hear you play the bass guitar. I mean, your friends, your peers, did they understand? Did they see it as a smart option, or did they struggle with that?
I think most of them understand, being New Zealand, I mean, we are the dairy leaders of the world. I mean, most of them can understand why I'd like to be in agribusiness. I mean, from the band, 2 of us have gone into agribusiness and left music. And yeah, I think it's just been a great option from school, taking the economics and accounting. I mean, agribusiness with the practical upbringing on a farm, then agribusiness, yeah, it combines my school education with my practical upbringing, so it was a no-brainer for me, really.
And you can still do your music in your own time.
Yes.
Yeah,
we need creative people.
Yeah, I mean, university, I mean, I've got 4 months off at the end of the year. There's plenty of time for music and that break. Growing up on the farm and being involved in the industry, I've seen what a great industry it is to be involved in, and that's why I've chosen to be a part of it.
Was choosing easy? I'm just thinking if you went to career evenings and open days and that kind of things, went to see your guidance counsellor, did other things get put in front of you, as Jacqueline's mentioned, the other perhaps easier topics or other paths, more creative paths you could have gone down, especially having a music background?
I think music was very tempting.
Right.
But I always knew from the careers evening, people would talk about agribusiness, and you'd go along and talk to all the Lincoln, Massey, Waikato, you'd talk to them and say, what's the future of agribusiness? And there'd be very helpful people there saying, this is where you need to be, this is the future, showing you the statistics, and that made the decision for me, really.
Smart boy. What are you doing as Waikato doing then to sell agriculture as a tertiary option, as a career choice? You mentioned the figures got down to 40 graduates a year. What are you doing to turn students on to going down this path at Waikato then? I
accept any invitation that is given to me in terms of talking with schools or society groups like Rotary or industry groups, Probus for instance, the grandparent type organisation, to talk about where the future is and how they can assist their grandchildren or children or siblings, children, whatever, into moving into a career that will give them the rewards that they want for them, and indeed that the children want for themselves. And that means money, security, and the feeling variety. That's one of those, and kudos, being regarded highly because you are a person in agribusiness doing good things for the economy. So part of my role is also to explain exactly what farmers do and what agribusiness does for New Zealand. So any invitation, we've got careers counsellors coming on Friday to University of Waikato, and my role is never to say this is what you should do. I say, what do you want for your young? Here is a thought. This is an industry which takes from all sectors of understanding and gives rewarding careers. But the kudos thing is part of it, and the upturn in graduate numbers from that dire 40 was because Jim Anderton, who was then Minister of Agriculture, started saying, this is where we need our brightest and best. And it was 40 in 2008. The minute he started talking, which was 2005, then we started getting the follow-through. And our latest figures, 2010, we were up to 100 graduates. This year it's going to be more when we eventually get the data, like 120. And we see that an increasing number of children, graduates, are prepared to acknowledge that they have an agricultural major. And that's terrific.
It's something to be proud of.
Absolutely. Have you got the smarts to come into agribusiness? Because you're driving the economy, and Thomas has.
And at a very basic level, I guess we were talking before about all the options there are out there for young people. It's a job, but on the bigger scale, it's making a difference. Yes. It's doing something for your country. And I suppose globally we need more ag students, don't we, Thomas? I
think that's bang on. I think, yeah. I mean, if you look at the future of New Zealand and the future of dairying, we haven't got any more land. So innovation in agribusiness is where we need to be. And I think, yeah, what a great industry to be part of.
And I guess to the tradition and the history of farming in this country, we've got a lot to take to the world.
Yeah, I think that's right as well. I mean, as the world needs feeding, protein, dairy, it's going to expand. I mean, what's New Zealand good at? Dairy farming. We can take that, we can sell that technology to the world.
We need to put sheep and beef in there as well.
Yeah.
The New Zealand Trade and Enterprise reports just recently about how we might be able to do sheep and beef working with South America and China and looking at livestock, you know, our genes, and certainly dairy's going well in China from taking cows over there. LIC's got a big program with Fonterra. So it's that sort of information that's really important, and the students are beginning to see that it's actually a global future for the rewards.
Do you see yourself heading overseas at some point, I imagine?
I'd definitely like to see that as part of my career. I mean, I don't know how long term that is, but I'd definitely like to see yeah, some form of international agribusiness.
But you've already worked over in Australia.
Yeah, I have. I mean, summer job and a harvest season in Australia, wheat and chickpeas. So
and you've been asked back.
Yeah, I've been asked back. They're happy to accept the Kiwi bars. So.
Kiwis have got a good reputation overseas.
Have got a good reputation overseas, yeah.
I'd like to talk more about that Trade and Enterprise report after the break. More in store, including 6 months into her new role in Hamilton. What does Massey's former Professor of Pastoral Agriculture make of the mighty Waikato? Come back soon to Straight Talk. Welcome back to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. The recent report urging dairy and sheep industry players to seize opportunities to farm offshore. Is this the answer? Is it not what's happening here at home we should be more focused on?
Well, I quite like the idea that we are maintaining good human welfare, animal welfare and environmental regulations. And Thomas's example of putting in a herd home because it actually helps profit as well as protect the environment is classic. His talk about innovation requirements is absolutely right. But yes, we keep saying we need the New Zealand story to be applied overseas, and there is the government with its innovation reports. It's had 2 from the growth, the growth agenda just recently, saying that we have potential with our science and innovation to take our story overseas. But when we look at overseas, the very reason that people can farm over there more profitably is because the regulations surrounding animals, humans and environment, and indeed the price of land, are all lower. So I think there is potential. Well, we need a lot of carefulness about taking the New Zealand story elsewhere.
It won't necessarily translate. Our way is not necessarily their way. We are a small island nation with only so much land to farm. Does it make sense? Is it logical to take our expertise elsewhere?
Certainly if we're very careful about it, but we should also, and the government has acknowledged this, be investigating more sustainable productions here. And it may well be that we need to look better at herd homes. And the herd home business, as long as we have the door open, means that animals are still considered to be free range. And then they get choices about where they are, and we can trap nutrients, we can consider the greenhouse gases, we can improve our productivity whilst protecting the environment. But they're quite expensive, aren't they, Thomas?
Yeah.
I'm thinking $500,000, perhaps more.
Tell us about your experience. You've got a herd home.
Yeah, we've invested in a cow standoff shelter, so similar concept to the herd home. We've got bark chip on the floor, so predominantly for cow standoff. Yeah, I think it is a profitable investment, and it can be made to pay for itself.
And I guess too, New Zealand being so small, it's a great testing ground, I think, for new things, isn't it? And you talk about innovation. Innovation is clearly king in your world, and leads to economic development. So it makes sense to concentrate on what's happening here at home. Yep,
and the government has acknowledged that it hasn't been putting enough money in research. It's talking about the fact that we have half the OECD investment, and actually New Zealand as a country includes overheads in that investment in the way that no other country in the world does. So we're actually running at about a quarter of the OECD investment, but we're still producing good things because we've got great scientists who actually care about their input and working with the farmers and seeing what they've developed put into practice. So herd homes are being tested at Massey University at the moment, and they're looking at the bedding and all sorts of ways of feeding, duration control, grazing, trying to keep our clean, green, free-range image whilst trapping the nutrients and making sure that the environment is not damaged in any way. So I think that's great.
Do you feel that the government needs to play a much greater role in pushing agriculture and science? I'm wondering how many of our MPs these days have actually got agricultural backgrounds compared with maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's a very different parliament, isn't it? Very few now. I come from a rural background. There are still some, and they do care about it, but actual understanding is we're getting a bit divorced from it, but I'd say that about the All Blacks as well. How have you found it at Hamilton? You were years at Massey University down in Palmerston North. Five years, and I was at University of Melbourne before then. And the answer is that the challenges are the same. It's always a question of where the funding is coming from, and our current system of funding what the students want to do is it's a big challenge. So can the government make better statements about where we need some workforce planning? Absolutely. That was what Jim Anderton was doing. And David Carter, through the Primary Growth Partnership, is trying to do the same. But we just need to keep hammering home the message. This is where the future lies, and we need everybody, the whole spectrum of the gamut, of the range of people involved: engineering, science, agribusiness, agricultural scientists, soil scientists, agronomists, and people who actually understand about milking cows. It's our strength, is that we have hands-on farmers who also work with the science community. Do you fly the flag where you can? Are people interested when they find out what you're doing at university?
I think they are. I mean, sitting in finance classes, you get people who are straight business students, and they sort of ask you, what do you study? And you sort of say, agribusiness, and you get the odd eyebrow, and they say, what does that involve? And you can sort of tell them it involves the sciences, it involves business, and it's quite a comprehensive course. And you sort of see them take down the paper numbers, you take down the code of the paper, and there's a general interest for agribusiness. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to promote it.
And then I say bring those students along to a class or to one of the events we're having. Let them get involved in it. We have open events, talks, winter evening talks and professorial addresses and those sorts of things. They can bring good students.
Yeah, exactly.
Wish you all the very best with your studies, Thomas.
Thanks very much.
And I think as long as you've got people like Jacqueline on your side, you're going to go great. Thanks very much for coming in with us this week.
Thank you.
You've been watching Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. Thank you to my guests, Thomas MacDonald and Jacqueline Rowarth, for being with us in the studio. And as always, to you at home for watching. If you'd like to get in touch, see the Country 99 TV website. It's always good to hear from you. I'm Karen McCarthy, back next time with more Straight Talk.